Welcome back to the Command Your Brand Show. I am your host, Jeremy Ryan Slate, the CEO and co-founder of Command Your Brand. We help brands to make a bigger impact out there in the new media space. You can grab our new PR book, recently ranked #1 on Amazon, over at bestpodcastbook.com. Reminder, if you're brand new to this channel, to like this video, leave us a comment, and smash that subscribe button if you want to command your brand. And we're going to be talking about all things health today, because it's interesting. And I've found this as I've, closing in on 40 now, I've learned this through my life. Like, most of the information you've gotten on health is wrong, and the way you're approaching it is wrong. And our guest today is going to help us really dive into that and give you more control. So Jeffrey Williams, thanks for hanging out with us today, man.
Hey, so glad to be here, Jeremy. It's really an honor.
So for people that may not know who you are and what you do, man, tell us a little bit about that.
Great. Well, yeah, I consider myself a vitalist, and a vitalist is just someone who really believes in the power that made the body, that believes in the power of the body to heal itself. And we like to lean into those things that are already present with us, like our breath or our movement or the way we're thinking, that can help us as a primary force in getting us well. So I lead a project called the Vitalist Project, as well as I am the director and lead teacher of the Alpha Biotic Training Academy. So I teach students and practitioners to help others in these same vital ways. And then I see clients here in my home in California, or at my office in California. And I've been at this for almost 25 years.
Wow. So I'm curious, how did you get into that world? Because I find so often, and I don't know if this is the case for you, but I find so often, like, we get into things to handle our own problem. Like, I got into podcasting because I'm like, man, I want to learn from really smart people and I can't get access to them. Let me start a podcast. For you, how did you kind of get into this whole world? And you have a very different viewpoint on how, the body functions and things like that. How did that come to be for you, man?
That's a great question. And I hear you on, most people do have kind of run into their own health challenges. I was fortunate to not run into those till much later.
Oh, wow.
What really led me to this was, I was going down path at university and just finding sort of lackluster. Like, I was like, really, this is it, and wanting to kind of see a greater synthesis between different aspects of ourselves as human beings. And so while I was in university, I started a parallel track of studying with other people who are doing different things, finding people who are studying or sharing Ayurveda or Chinese medicine or naturopathy. Things like that just piqued my interest. So I started kind of doubling down on my education and then applying it, getting into especially teaching movement classes and breathing classes at first, figuring stress is like the #1 killer in the world right now. And it was sort of something that the medical fields were overlooking. They weren't really addressing this deeper cause, which is stress. And I define stress these days as just being stuck in a primitive level of function that really cuts off our immune system, our digestive system, our tissue repair and cell function. And while the rest of the world was kind of addressing the symptoms, I was really drawn to getting into finding out more about the cause and what we could do about it.
So I'm curious too, because I know you had some firsthand experience about you actually discovered a solution to your wife's health challenges. I'm curious how that came about, and I guess, like, how a lot of that learning experience you've had has changed your viewpoint and how you look at health.
Yeah, I mean, that was a profoundly difficult situation. Just after having our 4th child, we got into a car accident. And for those of you who know much about the chronic disease, and especially things like Lyme disease, is that it can kind of sit dormant in the body and kind of be lurking in the corners. And
from someone that has Epstein-Barr, I totally understand.
Yeah, so that is something too. So if someone with Epstein-Barr, Lyme, or another condition, even MS, they get into a situation that is highly stressful, like a car accident, where the hormones shift and you have a big cascade of adrenaline kick in over time, the body can kind of become more vulnerable. And so when that adrenaline drops after a few weeks, the onset for my wife looked like a flu. And then it was like, wow, this has been a week. And then it just kind of kept going. And so this path to discovery, I mean, we went down all of the normal pathways, being that, I definitely have some expertise in some of these areas, but this is also, my wife, and we have a newborn. And so I'm thinking, okay,
Sure.
let's try every specialist. And, we went through the ringer, spent a lot of money in 9 months while she was bedridden. And then it was kind of like, okay, maybe I need to start looking at this the way I look at everything else, and look at what's been accumulating in the body due to stress, and started to call on my mentors and teachers. And through that process, we recognize that Lyme works just like any other chronic disease, whether it's cancer or MS, and that there's sort of a substrate or a foundation in the body that's being built while the body is stressed and not keeping up. And that's what these dysbiotic organisms like the spirochetes and Lyme are utilizing to colonize and to sort of take control of your body in a sense. And so I was just able to kind of create a synthesis between what many different streams of my teachers were telling me, and start to work out a plan and a way to sort of first address the body, get it out of a stress state, and then start to look at, well, what would be an irrefusable food for these organisms, and how would we break into their secret colonies, because they use things called neoplasms and cofactors to keep themselves discrete from your immune system while they're working. So I was able to discover process with some great guides, and we had great success, and we've been able to share that success with many others along the way since.
So you've really grabbed my attention, Jeffrey, like looking at stress, because I think we have such a basic understanding of stress, right? Like we look at it and we're like, oh man, I'm just so stressed out, or I'm drinking too much coffee and my adrenals don't like me, or whatever it is. And I guess when you look at it, like, how does stress actually work, and what are the things it's doing to the body? Because I don't think a lot of people take that for granted because we just don't know.
Totally. And you're spot on. And the way stress has been really viewed in our world is kind of this mental thing, like my job is stressful, but there's an actual neurophysiology of stress. And so what that means is stress isn't just something that happens to you, inside of you. In order to be in a stress state, it's very akin to the fight or flight state. So what that means is that whenever we're feeling threatened, or we're feeling inadequate to meet the demands of our life, we have this non-specific response, which is that the brain lateralizes into one hemisphere and goes back into a more primitive part of our brain. Those primitive parts of our brain are fantastic at getting us through survival situations where we're truly in a threatening situation, like a bear or tiger, right? We've been really well adapted to those simple stresses. So the way the system is designed is that the brain goes, okay, here's a threat. Let's go back into that primitive part of our brain. Let's put blood flow and oxygen to our limbs so that we can fight off the bear, or run from the bear, or freeze and protect ourselves from that bear. And in those situations with a bear or a tiger, there's a clear beginning and a clear ending. So the bears, we either make it or we don't. And we usually know that in a matter of minutes, 20, 30 minutes tops. And so at that point, the brain goes, oh, okay, everything's okay, and comes back into normal human level function. What's going on with us is that stress that we're well adapted to, the simple stress, we don't have that kind of stress so much anymore in our lives, rarely. But we do have.
So interesting, because like the thing I just got is it's almost like a state of stress, right? Like it's kind of never. You're talking about like when it's a lion or something like that. Like there's a beginning, a middle, and end, right? Yep. And I think for a lot of us, we're living in a state of stress, right? Like a lot of our stressors don't go away. We learn how to function with them.
Yeah. Like you just nailed it. Like there's many beginnings, like your boss, your bills, the traffic, the media, all those things.
Sure.
They just keep beginning and there's no clear ending. But for some reason, the way we haven't adapted to them, so they trigger that same response as if it were a bear, but the bear never goes away. So to understand how it's a causal factor to almost all disease is to understand that when we're in that state of survival and the blood flow and oxygen is in our limbs, guess what's not working and not getting full innervation, which is the energy of the nervous system, your immune system, your digestive system, your tissue repair, your cell function and replication. So all of that is on the back burner because your brain is really smart. And it's like, if I don't beat this bear right now, none of that stuff matters, right? So you're not going to prioritize those things. So the number one priority in addressing any of our challenges when it comes to our health is to first get us out of that stress state so that the body's innate intelligence can start doing what it already knows how to do.
So then I guess like looking at that then, this is so interesting. Like I guess looking at it then, like you mentioned kind of your expertise and how it crosses with your training and everything else. Like, so I guess what do you do to change that then? Like what things do you do to change that condition? Because obviously there's no bear there, but we think there's a bear there and we're operating like there's a bear there. So like what things do you do to let the body know like, hey, there is no bear there. We should do things differently. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah. Well, all of us are becoming more and more aware of things like meditation, things like yoga. Those are all great systems that have worked for us humans for a long time. And qigong, tai chi, even exercise can be the right kind of exercise, walking, right, in nature. Those things can all help change the body, the brain state out of the stress state. Massage, for instance, acupuncture, all those things are fantastic, but they're sort of slow shifts out of that state. And we typically will drop right back into that stress state when we're done. So what I've focused on is there's a hands-on modality, which is called alpha biotics. And that is a way that stimulates the main nerve ganglion on the back of the head that communicates directly to the brain, that part of the brain that is stuck in stress. And so it's like sending a signal saying, hey, to the brain, and the brain in less than half a second is able to scan its body, scan the environment and go, oh, there's no bear. So there's kind of like a reboot switch on your body. And so that's one of the ways, if you're fortunate enough to find someone who can do that technique. The other way is really to utilize gross motor movement. So because every time a stress state happens, it's always a one-sided thing. So we call it brain lateralization. The cool thing about our bodies is that our brain, if our left hemisphere controls our right side of our body and vice versa, right hemisphere controls the left side, there's types of movement that cross the midline. And that what that does, if you do it regularly enough over a course of a few minutes, is it gets the two hemispheres of the brain to start talking. And they're starting to share information and bounce it back off of each other. And then they recognize that there isn't really a bear. And it starts to shift that brain function, which then the body follows suit. And tight muscles relax, weak ones turn back on, and we get greater balance, which means we have access to that part of our brain that does the repair.
So I guess what about like when you're looking at kind of your daily activity level and like your things you do every day, like once you kind of start getting a better understanding of this, how does this change your daily operation, right? Like I'm curious on that. Like how does that change how you kind of start every day and go through every day? Because I'm sure you're going to do it differently, you know, once you have this data.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the coolest things about our bodies is as we wake up every morning, I think probably at this point, most people reach for their phone, right? But what's happening on a brainwave level is that our brains naturally slow down at night. So the stressed person doesn't get as much deep sleep as we need. Sleep is obviously a massive factor. It's where most of our healing happens, most of the repair happens, the digestion and elimination happens. So the brain's supposed to naturally slow down at night, and then it's going to naturally speed back up. So if you can work with your breath, for instance, and slow that breath really down, really slow it down, you can alter your state just like that. But there's
what about like other environmental factors too? Like, are you somebody that says like, hey, turn the Wi-Fi off at night and stuff like that as well? Like, are those things we should be looking at?
Totally. If you're sensitive like that, I would highly recommend turning off the Wi-Fi. But even a more easy one for most people is to really make it dark in their room where they're sleeping and cool out, have the temperature below 70 degrees. Both of those are helpful environmental cues to the body to slow down the brain waves, to get down into that deep delta rest, which is where the healing happens. And then when you're waking up in the morning, you're in a called a theta alpha state, and those are both brain waves as they're speeding back up, and they're very suggestible, meaning great time to meditate, great time to say out loud what it is you actually want to experience in your life, what it is you want to feel, because you're in this kind of more programmable, suggestible state. And instead of going straight to the phone, which has blue light, and that blue light is going to quickly elevate those brain waves right up to beta, which is kind of what most people are operating in during the day, which is also the stress brain waves.
And I guess like, what's your viewpoint on like getting other stressors out of our environment? Like obviously, like I guess news is a big one, right? Like, you know, Something in your house could kill you. More news at 10. Like, I think these are things like we should be avoiding, but I guess, are there other stressors you're looking at removing from your life? Maybe things we're not considering?
There's some things where, like, what I say is that we can't really get rid of all of the stressors. What we can do is get better adapted to those stressors. Of course, we can eat better. We can hydrate better. We can sleep better. We can move and exercise better. We can become masters of breath. All of us have the capacity to just pay attention to our breath. Most people haven't even ever taken a conscious breath and just been like, wait, let me just count this breath and really slow it down. These are things that you can do that will have a massive effect on the whole quality of your life. And then, of course, like you're mentioning, watching the news can be highly stimulating and stressful because the news tends to focus on everything that's not good and not working. And so those things can, again, elevate brain waves, put you back into defense mode, especially if it's something you're doing right before bed.
I guess, like, looking at it, through this whole process, what has been for you, I guess, the biggest mindset shifts you've had from the work you've done? Like, what are things that you're like, wow, I can't believe I believe that? Or what are the biggest mindset shifts you've had around that?
Yeah, I would say that the biggest shift is that we are so much more powerful and our bodies are so much more brilliant than we've been led to believe. Like, it's incredible. The way I like to think about it is like these human bodies are the creme de la creme. They are the Ferraris among vehicles, and we're all sitting inside of one. And yet most people are living in that victimhood mindset where they believe that life is happening to them and they have yet to take responsibility for the choices they've made and where they are in their life. But that simple shift from saying, you know what, I'm the one that got me here, and taking responsibility, it gives you your power back. And so I've seen it over and over again as people grapple with their own conditioning and their own way of seeing what's going on and what's led them to their current health circumstance. As soon as they take the keys back and put them in the ignition and turn it on, and they realize that they have a lot more power than they ever thought they did, it's incredible what can happen. And one last thing about that is understanding that there is no disconnection between our mind and body, that they are truly reciprocating forces that are intertwined and can't be separated. So one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of the people having the biggest health challenges are living lives that they don't love, doing things that they don't care about. And because they think they have to, or they're supposed to, or they've been told to, but deep inside of them, there's something else they want to do. They want to express. The way they want to live is different than what they've been doing. And when you get access to that and you listen to it just a little bit more, and you start to fill your life with the things you love, not only do you love your life more, but your health turns on. Your vitality goes through the roof. Your ability to focus increases. Your ability to be productive and creative increases. So it's much more like it's a multifaceted approach where, yes, we have to look at those stressors. Yes, we have to look at our lifestyle, and we have to look at what we're actually giving our attention to, not just the media, but what parts of our life, what are the things that we're doing that we actually love, and how can we do more of those? Like, what lights us up and makes us feel alive? That is a key to your health.
I think that is the single most vital thing you've stressed today. Because I think when you look at it, Jeffrey, like, so many people look at, this happened to me, or that happened to me, or this happened to me. And it's when you're a victim and when things happen to you, that means you can't change your condition, right?
Yep.
Like, when you have responsibility for your own condition, good or bad, the positive about that, man, is you can change your condition. You can do something about that. And I think when you can have that viewpoint shift, it opens the world up to all this possibility. And I think for a lot of people, they can't see that possibility.
Yeah. And back to the stress piece, what's so amazing to see, and we've seen it in brain scans over and over again, which is that people, when they're doing things they don't want to do and they are hesitating and procrastinating and getting frustrated about these things that, again, they're saying they have to do, guess where their brain is? It's in a stress state. It's in the hindbrain, lateralized to one side. So that means the whole body is, again, putting off all the good things that keep us healthy. Our immune system, digestive system, tissue function, or tissue repair and cell function are all on the back burner. But what's really cool is that taking brain scans on those people when they're doing the thing they love, whether that's, for me, it's like teaching, and being with students and clients that want to take their health into their own hands. When someone is like, they are really love painting, but they haven't painted in a long time because they tell themselves they have to do the grind. When they start doing the thing they love, their brain comes out of that stress state naturally. It comes right into whole brain function. They have prefrontal cortex access. And what that means is as the blood flow and oxygen go to the prefrontal cortex, someone becomes more objective. They're able to see more sides of a situation than they could when they were in a stress state, because that primitive level of our brain is very binary. It's polarized. So it's either predator or prey, right? It's very simplistic, but our human brain is able to see all sides of a situation, which gives us so much more empathy for ourselves and for others and for really every circumstance in our life, including our health.
Absolutely. Well, Jeffrey, I really enjoyed this conversation, man. For people listening, if they want to connect with you, if they want to find out more about your work, how's going to be the best way for people listening to do that?
Yeah, so they can check out vitalistproject.com. And that's where you can find out about my upcoming courses and trainings, as well as my services.
Very cool. Well, Jeffrey Williams, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, man.
Absolute pleasure, Jeremy. Hope you have a great day.
If you guys are brand new to this channel, don't forget to like this video, leave us a comment, and smash that subscribe button if you want to command your brand and make a better future. We'll catch you guys next time.